You're still live on TV3. It's the New Day show. A lot to talk about this morning. A lot happened in terms of issues surrounding governance yesterday. We know that a major protest took place, raising concerns about how the petitions surrounding the removal of the Chief Justice is being handled. And a key talking point arising out of that protest has been the clash that took place between the minority leader and the police officer, already sparking some discussion. We know that the police has decided to invite the minority leader. They've actually written to the Speaker of Parliament asking that the minority leader is released to enable questioning take place about what exactly transpired. The police has also committed that the officer involved would also be engaged to get his side of the story as well. Another aspect of the nation's governance life that has also dominated the headlines yesterday had to do with issues surrounding asset declaration. We know that as part of John Dramani Mahama, His Excellency's 120-day social contract, he did indicate that they were going to ensure that they have a code of conduct for public officers in place. That was launched yesterday, and the president used the occasion to also comment on appointees. You recall, when he took office, he did indicate that those who had been appointed into public office were required to publish their assets, make it available to the Auditor General as they are required by law by the 31st of March. And post 31st March, we know that there were some individuals who had failed to meet that particular deadline. The president has indicated that, well, because of that, they are going to lose 3 months of their salary. They are going to forfeit it, which will be paid into the Mahama Care Trust Fund as a means of raising funds as well and as a means of punishment. And he said further asked that they proceed to declare their assets. If they do not do so, then they would have to consider themselves sacked from office. Still yesterday, the presidency did something very interesting. And for those of you who have followed the politics of the country, can connect it to other things. There were 2 vehicles that the president received. We do not know who the donor is, but the presidency has announced that after the president had received those 2 vehicles, they've been handed over to the states and placed in the pool. It's a story that one of my guests this morning will be connecting it to other matters to let it make sense to some of you who may not be familiar with the context within which that particular donation is quite interesting and what it signals by way of the changes that we are making in our commitments to good governance and dealing with issues that potentially raises conflict of interest matters. And so we're going to start the discussion first by running you through highlights of the code of conduct. We've not seen the formal documents yet, but the president in his address did touch on various aspects of it, and that will be coming up on the screen shortly to give us a sense of what we should expect by way of the code of conduct for public officers. So first, it makes the point that you cannot award contracts to yourself, your family, or close friends. And this has always been a very big issue because of the conflict of interest, obviously, and the fact that you tend to have individuals who may not necessarily be deserving or have the competency to execute contracts, nonetheless getting government contracts. No recommending relatives or friends for government positions, and avoid actions that appear biased or self-serving. Breaches attract public apology, reprimand, suspension, resignation or termination, and attempt to buy state assets. That one will result in immediate dismissal. In terms of the update on the asset declaration, missed compliance deadline for asset declaration, that is the 31st March 2025 deadline, forfeit 3 months salary plus mandatory 1 month salary donation to the Mahama Cares Trust Fund. And the consequence apply regardless of position or seniority. In terms of the general details of what the president put out by way of the code of conduct, you are required to uphold integrity, humility, accountability, and respect for citizens. National interest must always override personal interest, and misuse of office or state resources strictly prohibited. And appointees must eschew luxury and show modesty in public service. A public portal will be made available for violations to be reported, and that will be handled in a confidential and impartial manner. Appointees are also to be accountable for every cedi spent under their watch. So that is it by way of the general details surrounding the code of conduct for public officers. We look forward to getting a full document and find out how the various aspects of it have been constructed. And I want to bring into the conversation at this point Manasseh Azuri. Manasseh is an investigative journalist. His investigations have over the years centered around issues of corruption. And so this is an area that he was quite familiar with. Manasseh, it's good to see you this morning.
Good to see you, Joseph.
I want to start the conversation first from the aspects of the asset declaration, and want to fall on your experience as someone, the work you do. How important is the asset declaration regime? I mean, we know that over the period, anti-corruption campaigners have simply expressed their frustration about the fact that what we have currently is not fit for purpose. But even with what we have, it appears appointees are still struggling to comply with it.
Well, I think I agree with those who think we don't have an asset declaration regime that is fit for purpose. As we speak, people just declare something. Nobody knows what is in there. So if an appointee thinks that he or she, at the end of the 4 years, can amass 500 million cedis, he can put it in there, and later on when assets come up or something comes up, and then you say, well, go in there, I had this amount, nobody is able to find out. But even with that, it is still important, because when there is an investigation and people zoom in, if those doing the investigation want to be thorough, they would be able to cross-check some of the assets when they were acquired as against what has been declared. So it is still important for people to declare, even though it is sealed, nobody looks at it, and almost everyone gets away with whatever falsehood that is contained in there. I think it is important, and more important now is the compliance. And then we have a president who is listening. I'm saying this because this is not the first time the Fourth Estate has done a story like this. I remember when I was there, we did a similar thing. Many names came up, not even an acknowledgement from the office of the president. So if you have a president who says a date, and I think that date is even shorter than what they should be allowed to go around and all of that, but very strict date, those who have not met it, there are sanctions. And I think this serves as a precedent that whoever comes, whoever is appointed, will begin to take this seriously. And I think we are making progress.
Manasseh, I'll have you hold briefly for me. Let me bring into the conversation Hamza Suyini Saibu. Is a legal practitioner, a member of the National Democratic Congress communication team as well. Hamza, always a delight to have you. Today you are looking a bit calm than usual. What can I say to trigger you quickly?
I've always been like this, my brother. You can excuse the mischief this morning. Good morning to you, of course, and our cherished viewers. And my brother, who appears to be enjoying somewhere else, whilst we are busy trying to put the country back on the road. Manasseh, I think that it's high time you started thinking of coming back home to do what you are known for, because clearly the environment has become once again friendly for you to ply your trade and do so without looking over your shoulders, because you can be guaranteed that under His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, we are committed to upholding press freedoms. Unfortunately, we also remember what you had to go through in the last 8 years. Many of your likes. Thankfully, change has come, and the time has come once more for you to come back. I think that the country needs you. I know that you are still working from wherever you are, but we need you here to be able to groom many of your likes to hold our governments accountable. And you can do so under a John Dramani Mahama presidency. So, my brother, the time has come for you to return home.
Interesting. Yes, I mean, now let me bring you into the discussion now, Hamza. I mean, first, generally, I think the president is being commended with regards to what he's tried to do with the asset declaration, even though the general consensus is that the law is not good at all. I mean, how come, are you able to hazard a guess as to how appointees were not able to even deal with the deadline, the 31st March, and now the president has had to impose sanctions in this manner?
I am unable to do so because clearly I've not had the opportunity of speaking to many of the appointees that we are made to understand failed to comply with the president's directive. So it will be, I cannot begin to hazard a guess as to why they couldn't fulfill that obligation. But what I do know, like Manasseh indicated, if you look at the Act itself, Act 550, when it comes to asset declaration, it gives them 6 months to be able to file their asset declarations with the Auditor General. Thankfully, we have a president who feels that these are things that can be done in a matter of a month, or in most cases, even 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It shouldn't be difficult for you to put your assets together, comply with the demands of the form or the schedule as attached to Act 550, and get it filed with the Auditor General. You don't need 6 months to do so, from where I sit. So it is it is commendable that His Excellency the President has decided to set his own benchmarks as to how to get this thing through. But I have always argued that it is not just about laws in our books. To a very large extent, it has to do with commitment, especially from the political class. And for some time now, it has been missing. So if you are fortunate to have a president who is interested in setting his own benchmarks, holding his appointees accountable to those benchmarks, I think that it is a good start. So the law is there. Yes, the law gives them the 6-month window to be able to file these reports. But we are dealing with a president who has his own benchmarks. And if you are ready to work under him, then it shouldn't be difficult for you to comply with his directives as President of the Republic. So, like I indicated, it is something that we need to ensure that future presidents also take a cue from. Sometimes you may have the law, and the law may prescribe a certain time frame for certain actions to be done. But we know that most of these actions can be done within a certain period of time. It should be possible for the president to come out with his own directives. To a certain extent that the directives are not an affront to the laid down law, I do not have any problem with that. And I think that that is what His Excellency President Muhammad did. And I'm sure that it is the reason why he resisted the invitation by so many people to get these appointees sacked. Because that is not what has been prescribed in the law itself. If you look at Act 550, that is not the prescription. So clearly, if he had gone overboard to sanction them, these people would have had issues. They would have had the legal legs to rely on, because the Act does not prescribe something to that effect.
I mean, because you make the point about the legal issue and the Act not prescribing, I mean, there are those who would also make the argument that the sanction he's tried to impose also are not provided. I mean, if someone decides that he's not going to forfeit his salary.
No, it's not true. Even in the Act, it is stated clearly, you can reprimand.
No, but so, the point about the salary that he said they are going to forfeit.
That is the point I'm making. The Act makes it possible for the president or the appointing authority to be able to reprimand his appointees. For failure to do so, he can reprimand.
Yeah, but the reprimand
he can sanction.
The reprimand is not the salary laws.
But that is you cannot determine the president which way to exercise his discretion when it comes to reprimands or sanctions. He has decided for now that he wants to be able to sanction them in such a way that they will not have access to their monthly salaries. It is something within his power.
Because if you look at Act 550, which you made reference to, what it does basically is that it says that, well, if you fail to make the declaration, you should be sanctioned in accordance with Section 8. Now, Section 8 simply says that an allegation that the public officer has contravened or has not complied with the provision of Part 1 of this Act shall be made to the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and in the case of the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, too, the Chief Justice, who shall, unless the person concerned makes a written admission of the contravention or non-compliance, cause the matter to be investigated. The Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice or the Chief Justice may take such action as he considers appropriate in respect of the results of the investigation or admission. So the law as we have it currently just entrusts the investigative aspect of it to SHRAJ. And in fact, we've seen it in times past. There were even judges who issues were raised about they not declaring the assets. And you recall that SHRAJ would have to basically now look into it and decide for themselves.
But then again, you see, Akable, that's what they want to do. Making. These are the laid down procedures that Act 550 requires us to follow. Today, you have a president who appears to be impatient, especially when it comes to issues of corruption. And he's committed to leaving a legacy. And based on that aspirations, he has decided to set his own benchmarks, which still falls within the remit of the law. He is sparing us these procedural processes that probably would have taken long time for us to fulfill. For instance, if the appointees had failed to declare their assets in line with the Act, this is what Section 8 says that should happen. Go to either the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. If it has to do with the Commissioner of Shiraj himself, then it goes to the Chief Justice to handle. Now you have a president who has decided based on his own benchmarks that, look, this is how I want to proceed. And that decision does not constitute an affront to Act 550. I mean, if you are willing to comply with presidential directives, you don't have a problem with the president. But if you fail to comply with presidential directives, sanctions will be meted out. And he made that clear when he gave the deadline to be 31st of March, 2025. Okay. Today, some of them failed to meet that particular deadline. The president has proceeded to take action. And you see, this is not an action that is even wasteful in nature. This is an action that seeks to empower the Mahama Care with the needed financial resources to be able to start its processes or its activities of protecting the vulnerable in our society. Many of our compatriots who are out there struggling with financial difficulties, largely because of their health conditions, and they cannot have access to the needed health attention. What is going to happen is that the salaries of these appointees will be paid into that fund to be able to provide the needed health attention for many of our compatriots out there. So it is something that we must commend. Okay. And for me, and I think that Manasseh will be excited about it because we have the laws. If you look at this country has a litany of laws when it comes to regulating state behavior and even the conduct of appointees. But where have we gone with those pieces of legislation? Today you have a president who has demonstrated that, look, even aside the legislation, there's the need for me to also have my own code of ethics that will guide the way I lead this country with my appointees. It is something we must commend. Unless, of course, we want to tie him down or stampede that sincere effort by references to procedures as laid down in Section 8 of Act 550. Unless, of course, you want the president to stop whatever he's doing and go back to the Act. Of course, if that is what you want, he's there to serve you. I'm sure that His Excellency President Mahama will listen. But from where I sit, this is the kind of leadership we need. And you do not need to allow your rules, or if you like, your laws, to tie you down where it gives you an opportunity to also pursue a similar objective that at the end of the day would inure to the good people of this country. And that is what we are committed to doing. Okay. I mean, let me welcome into the studio Nana Sapon. Nana Sapon is a senior political aide to Alan Kojo, chairman of the Movement of Change. Nana, Akwaba. Yeah. Bibi Aboko.
I mean, I don't know, Bible. You look good.
Thank you.
You look good.
Well, what do you make of the discussion surrounding how the president is handling this issue of the asset declaration and the appointees who have failed to meet the deadline that he fixed, even though that deadline was, I mean, strictly speaking, was lesser than what the law actually required them to do. I mean, they had 6 months under the law. He said, do it by 31st March.
Thank you very much, Joe. And a good morning to my brother and Manasseh. And when is Manasseh coming?
Oh,
I asked the same question.
I think you guys should relax for Manasseh. Hamza earlier was...
I saw a picture of him on Facebook and he was holding the book. I saw Kanyama.
You know, before he came, Hamza was saying that...
Oh, really?
Hamza was saying that, according to Hamza, and this one I'm quoting Hamza, Hamza said the country is safer for him to practice journalism, so he should come to the country.
He has always been safe.
That's not true. Manasseh had to be flown out by the Media Foundation for West Africa. Have you forgotten?
Manasseh.
Now, you see where you're taking us to. Please deal with the issues for me.
Yes. Back to the asset declaration, because Manasseh will be declaring his assets soon. The ones he left behind. That was just by the way. I coming here, I was monitoring most of these media houses. One thing that I got a bit shocked or surprised about was the fact that people kept saying, and I think I overheard Hamza also making the same point, that the president couldn't have gone beyond the sanction he gave because the act does not actually give him that powers. You know, people are making that level of argument that the appointees, if fired, have the right to even pursue a case in court if my interpretations of the statements they were making was right. But you know, the president is the employer. And you and I agree that the employer has the right to hire and fire. He has the right to fire without even giving a reason. And so if the president, on employing you, give you a condition, you understand that if you do not do A, B, C, D, I would fire you. It is a condition precedent. You accepted the employment on that condition. It's a contract. And the statement by the president becomes one of the elements of the contract. I'm not a lawyer. They are lawyers. They understand better. You understand me? But I would just say that the president probably tempered justice with mercy and decided to go the line he went, saying that, and of course, I'll commend His Excellency the President. I didn't know he was such a good fundraiser. I mean, that was a very beautiful way of raising funds for the Mahama Care, you know. But he just tempered justice with mercy. As it stands, he could have fired all of those who did not declare their assets. Well, he made an emphatic statement, and you accepted the appointment on that statement. He doesn't, in fact, the president does not owe anybody an explanation why he's firing you. He is saying that, yes, the law is there, Act 550, but I am telling you that in as much as the law is there, I am employing you on behalf of the people of Ghana. And, I mean, he's done very well. What I think I would be pushing for, which I have repeatedly stated, is the urgent need for the amendment of Act 552. For us to have more punitive sanctions in there, explicitly stated what should be done. When you read from the Section 8 that you were talking about, you agree with me, you are a lawyer, that this is so ambiguous. The procedures, having to go to Shraj, and I mean, it's too cumbersome. There should be very clear statements in there, very clear sanctions, right? We should amend it to the extent that the Auditor General would have the powers to break the seal when it's presented to him. Because per the Act, the Auditor General has not got the right to open it until otherwise there is a need for an investigation or the court has ordered. That should be looked at. We should be pushing for an amendment for the inclusion of the publication of the assets, where the Auditor General and his team, or the Auditor General will be able to form a team for them to authenticate whether or not those assets that have been declared, not only assets, but liabilities. We always forget that the aspect of liabilities.
It's a very important aspect, actually.
Because there are some of them who have borrowed money from banks so much so that they are not even able to pay. And we want to give them our purse to hold for us. There are some who are still owing their wives.
Even businessmen.
Businessmen who have done contracts and have not paid. And these are all liabilities. They are supposed to declare them. So we should push for probably the Auditor General to have a valuation board at the audit service, that when you have presented your asset declaration, he breaks the seal, takes it out, goes to inspect whatever that you have declared, value them and add reports. You have been working in the courts. When you are going to grant somebody a bail, and it's a conditional bail, and you would have to present assets to that effect, it goes through a process. The registrar gives you the form, you go around. If it's a landed property, the Lands Commission and other people, the evaluation report and everything is added. It should go through the same procedure. The Auditor General, when receiving it, should receive that form with accompanying documents declaring that indeed they are yours and declaring that indeed the value that you have given is what it is as at the time of declaration. Because if you have bought a landed property at about 100,000 Ghana cedis, and because if you look at the form, the value at the point of purchase and the current value is supposed to be stated. But as a layman, not a valuer, how are you able to cost or put a price on that property at its current state? It should go through a proper valuation. And this cannot be done if the Act 550 is not amended. And that is what we should be pushing for. Yes, the president is doing whatever he is doing to be able to keep the sanity of this whole discourse. He's taking the lead. And yesterday when I was listening to him and he was talking about the gifts beyond the 20,000 Ghana cedis ought to be declared, I said in my head, Mr. President, you need money for campaign. If the minister is an MP, it would take a self-disciplined person to be able to declare some of these things. Because he will not only be thinking about today, he will be thinking about his elections that is coming in 20 years, in 4 years. So we should be able to put in measures to monitor some of these things. And of course, we'll throw a question also to the investigative journalists like Manasseh and his colleagues. You know, what's that? Sometimes they go out there to deliberately test people to see if they would fall. The code of ethics that has been published, we would urge the Labour Minister and the persons who are actually responsible for it to make it public for all of us to see. They shouldn't deliberately go to tempt people on some of these things. Let's allow them the space to work. Let's allow them the space to work. They should go through an orientation on this code of ethics. I mean, I see it more as an HR document. The experts should go through with them and let them understand indeed what's actually in the document. It is different having the document and it is different having an understanding of what is in the document.
Okay. Let me bring in Manasseh back into the conversation. And Manasseh, are you satisfied with how the president has handled the issues surrounding the appointees that could not comply with the deadline he had imposed?
Yes, I think I do. Could he have done better? Yes, he could, or let's say even worse. But we should also know, as I stated at the beginning, that the law gives people 6 months to comply. He decides to restrict it to, for some, just a month, because not all the appointees were appointed very early on in the administration. So it is someone raising the bar, raising the stakes. And I have mentioned that in the previous administration, some people spent all the 4 years without declaring. Nothing happened to them. The report was published. The president didn't even acknowledge it. So if someone fails for a month or two, and we have a president who serves this notice, it may not be enough, but I think it is good progress, and I'm okay with that.
And another issue that came up yesterday had to do with the 2 cars that were received and how they were handled. I remember that story that you did quite closely because when we were working together around that time. So, share with us, for those who may not understand, why you were quite happy about how this has been handled and how this is a step in what you believe is the right direction for the country.
Yes, when I saw it, I said this was good progress from the Ford saga. And of course, my followers in the NDC didn't take it lightly that I even referenced the Ford saga. But many lessons have been learned. And even before this act yesterday, I heard something. I didn't hear it from the NDC or even the presidency. I heard it from sources close to a certain businessman engaged in some dealings with the state, who heard somehow that President Mahama needed a farm machinery in his farm in northern Ghana, and this businessman on his own decided to donate an equipment. The equipment gets to the president's farm. The managers call him, I'm talking of President Mahama, and he asked who brought it. He didn't know of any such thing. And when they mentioned the source, he said they should return it. And my sources said they found a buyer in Kumasi, so the machine didn't get to Accra. I'm saying this to emphasize that, look, when we do these stories, we don't do them because we hate whoever is in charge. We do them to help our governance system. And I said progress, but not maybe more could have been done. I don't know of this code of conduct, but the previous code of conduct, which I read whilst doing the fourth story, said that gifts from business entities should be rejected outright. There should be outright rejection of gifts from business entities. So I would have expected to know the source of this gift, I mean the cars. If they are from a business entity and if they are even declared, that would still be worrisome. Because if I am a contractor and I put in a bid for a contract, and then this businessman whose company also donates vehicles to the office of the president puts in a bid, if that person wins, I would have some reservations about the fairness of the process. I might think that the gifts he gave to the government may have influenced his win. And when you look at the Shroud Code of Conduct and then what they talk about conflict of interest, it is real or perceived. The perception that that gift may have influenced the contract could be problematic. So what I'm trying to say is that this, just like the asset declaration, is good progress, but the source of the gift, there are people who give gifts may not want to be named publicly. If it comes out of, well, this is just an ordinary person who wants to help the state, fine. But if it is a business, it might be problematic. And this comes back to the Ford saga. We know that Jibril Kanazwe, who gave the vehicle, first put in a bid for a contract in Ghana. And these are his words to me that I recorded. And then he didn't win the contract. Then he said he had a friend at Mechanical Lloyd called Mokopo, who said, well, let's go and then see the vice president. They go to meet the vice president, who a few months later becomes a president of the republic. This man begins to win contracts. First, the embassy fence wall in Burkina Faso, which Parliament said they should investigate. He won the Nkwantado de Pepeso section of the Eastern Corridor Road, and there was an 82 million cedi single-sourced road project in the Upper West region. Then a vehicle comes in. Unlike what we saw yesterday, we didn't hear of any declaration. The story is published, Shrike is petitioned, and the president's lawyers argue that the president was on a campaign tour when the vehicle arrived, so he returned around November 2012 and said it should be added to the presidential pool of vehicles. It was fitted with machine guns and added to the security detail of the president. But my evidence showed that in 2013, Vision Logistics Limited, a private clearing agency, cleared this vehicle at the Tema port and paid duty, which defeats the explanation that it had been added to the presidential pool. I don't think a vehicle with fitted with machine guns running duties for the president in 2012 would go back to this process in 2013. Having said that, issues like this or declarations like this help us to also begin to keep an eye on certain things. When transparency in itself doesn't naturally translate into the fight against corruption, transparency gives people enough information to ask the necessary questions and hold people accountable. So I still call it progress. And if there had been this incremental progress in our democracy, we wouldn't be here today. So despite the lingering questions, I would score the president highly. And just to contribute a little to the asset declaration thing that was discussed earlier, my point is this. If everybody is encouraged to comply by laws like this, it also helps those of us doing investigations. It helps the state investigative bodies, despite all the flaws of these laws, to be able to do their work well. I have done stories that, for instance, the PPA and others, I did a story of Sir John, and when they started investigating, they realized that assets were not declared. And people were saying, well, Sir John had worked all his life. Are you saying that he couldn't have got ABC? But if Sir John's assets had been declared, and then they got in there, picked his asset declaration form, and realized that the lands and the houses that were bequeathed to family members and friends forever were not there at the time he was taking office, it would have made the work of the state investigative bodies easier. And they would begin to ask, how did you come by ABC after getting into public office? So these actions may seem as though they are not enough, and we cannot have enough, but I think we are making some incremental progress, which we should applaud the president and then call for more.
Okay.
So that is my view. But let me just respond quickly to the calls that I should come home. I'm in school. The Zoom Lion, the head of communications, said my salary was not good enough. That's why I'm outside the country. I'm in school, and I also agree with them that the environment for media practice, as far as I'm concerned, I cannot speak for everybody, is safer under President Mahama.
Absolutely.
I have said this many times. And the other thing that also even makes it heartwarming is that today, the journalists at the Fourth Estate who did this story will be so happy and empowered to do more, because they know that doing stories like this would bring some impact. And there is some fulfillment in that. So press freedom is not enough, but when duty bearers are willing to act on investigative works, that alone gingers many others to do that. My very first investigative work was the JIDA scandal. All the contracts except the very troubling and corrupt Zoom Lion contract were cancelled. All the contracts were cancelled except that one. 2 people were jailed. A law was passed. We retrieved some 60-something million cedis from the Agams group. And the contracts that were cancelled saved Ghana not less than $100 million. When you have such a reaction from the government of the day, you get some motivation to continue doing the kind of work you're doing. Investigative journalism is dangerous, it is risky, it has a toll on your mental health, your family will discourage you. But actions like this would gladden the hearts of the journalists at the Fourth Estate, and someone wanting to do this kind of work will say, look, if I do this work, there is a president who listens.
Okay.
So I very much agree with Hamza that these things are very heartwarming, and they create a conducive environment for critical journalism. Having said that, I would want Hamza to convey to the president that there is a very unconscionable Zoom Lion contract with the YEA, which I have been fighting for 12 years now.
Okay.
I've petitioned the president, and I hope he adds that to the good works he has started.
Okay. Thank you very much, Manasseh. And I think the YEA, you've been having some engagement with the YEA CEO. We know that he's also indicated what he intends to do, but we'll see how all of that plays out. But because you made reference to the Ford gift and you recounted a bit of the facts about the contractor not getting contracts and now getting contracts subsequently and all of those matters, I think it's important we indicate and put the conclusions that were reached out there. And the question of whether the president had conducted himself in a manner that violated the Constitution by receiving the gift of the vehicle, the conclusion of Shraj was to the effect that there was no evidence showing that he had used this office for private gain to benefit the donor. There was also no evidence to also show that he had used or permitted the use of his position or title or any authority associated with his office in a manner intended to coerce or induce another person, including a subordinate, to provide any benefit, financial or otherwise, to the donor. The only other part that was a topical issue was the fact that they said the acceptance of the gift had breached the gift policy as well, and that they said that despite that breach, the gift had been surrendered to the states. And so that was also an important conclusion that I think it's only fair that we put out, because the part of the allegation has been recounted as well. I want to come to Hamza, and reading from the Shraj decision that I make reference to, Shraj quotes the Constitutional Review Commission expressing concerns about the fact that there is the need for legislation to define in detail the situations that constitute conflicts of interest, to provide a better framework. And so the Constitutional Review Commission had expressed concerns. Shraj had even issued guidelines. There was always a code of conduct for public officers that governments were issuing. The question is there a reason why maybe we are not thinking along those lines, but once again we are still going by way of the guidelines, as against perhaps having a robust framework in place that regulates every aspect of public office with sanctions well spelled out, as against the code of conduct line that we've been towing all along?
Before responding to that question, let me quickly draw the attention of my dear brother Manasseh to activities at the port. For those of us who in one way or the other have business transactions around that sector, we know that unfortunately there are so many ways you can get your goods cleared without actually paying the duty instantly, only to get back to go through the processes of getting the duty paid. So if you have a vehicle that has been imported into the country and presented to somebody as a gift in 2012, and your investigations reveal that indeed, as far as the documentation is concerned, the clearing was actually done in 2013. If you are familiar with the unfortunate practices at the port, you would know that this is not something that should come to you as a surprise. So I would have expected then, maybe those days, my brother to have directed his attention to the activities, especially at the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, when it comes to issues of this nature, because these things happen. So the fact that the presidency indicated to you that the vehicle was presented in 2012, and your investigations at the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority indicates that it was cleared in 2013, does not mean that the presidency, in truth, did not receive the said vehicle in 2012. These are some of the issues we need to look at, especially when it comes to the operation of our state enterprises or our state agencies. There are so many things that we need to resolve in that sector. Again, for listening to Manasseh in relation to the issue, I get the sense that even he agrees that there was no hidden motive on the part of the president when the vehicle was received. Because none has been demonstrated, even in the Shraj report. Clearly, these were things other presidents took for granted. And I am pretty much convinced, following the politics of His Excellency President Mahama, even before he became vice president, I know that if you look at his presidency, many of the things that we complained about as citizens, when he got the opportunity, these were the things he attempted resolving. Unfortunately, he himself became the butt of attacks as a result of these policies. We are talking about the code of conduct. Prior to His Excellency President Mahama's introduction of the first code of conduct in 2013, I am not sure that Manasseh Azuri Awuni would have had a benchmark apart from the Gift Act. He would have had a benchmark against which to measure President Mahama's actions. So that was progress in itself. And that is how you expand the frontiers of accountability as a responsible president. This was a president who launched that code of conduct. Based on the stipulations in the code of conduct, Manasseh Azuri Awuni determined that indeed you received a vehicle, though evidence showed that even when the vehicle was received, it was presented to the state, it was given to the state and added to the pool of the state vehicle. But Manasseh Azuri Awuni still had a measurement yardstick based on which to judge, to assess the president's actions. Commendable. Commendable on the part of His Excellency President Mahama. But we all know that when the vehicle was received, it was not taken home. Indeed, the person I refer to as the squealer of the MPP, Comrade Kweku Baku, himself, even with his disdain for the politics of the new National Democratic Congress, had no choice but to agree that indeed President Mahama actually handed over the vehicle to the state. And what was the
Shraj investigation confirmed?
Yeah, so what was the useful lesson out of this? And that is why it's important, because if you remember in 2020, His Excellency President Mahama, somewhere in the Upper West region, said something significant to the good people of this country, that he's the only president who would have an opportunity to come back and correct his mistakes. Today, His Excellency President Mahama is back. And he's living that dream. He's further making it possible for the likes of Manasseh Azuri Awuni to be able to do their work. And you see, you asked, now I'm back to the issue of the legislation.
Yeah.
If you look at the issue of conflict of interest, it is a very thorny issue. Even in the Western world, it is difficult for you to have a legislation that truly deals with the nitty-gritties of conflict of interest. And it is not for nothing that even somewhere in 1996, the United Nations decided to adopt code of conduct as a major plank of dealing with the issue of conflict of interest. And so if you want to look at the history of code of conduct, how it found its way into our political space, go back to 1996, when the United Nations on its own also decided to adopt same. Because you see, it is difficult for you to legislate or find the needed legislation to be able to address the thorny issues of conflict of interest. It has to do with ethics. It has to do with principles that maybe, from where I sit, a code would be sufficient enough to address.
Okay.
Now, His Excellency President Mahama was the first to introduce it under the Fourth Republic in 2013. He has proceeded to do same again now. Unfortunately, the last administration failed to do so. They decided not to take a cue from that example that he gave.
I know they were trying to pass a code of conduct for public officers bill. I know it went to cabinet. It never made it to parliament.
You see, exactly, but they failed. His Excellency President Mahama is back again. He has decided to continue with that good governance plank of our democracy. It is something we all must commend. But you see, Akable, I have always said, like Manasseh indicated, there's a tendency for people to look down upon these successes. Because as a country, we seem to be focusing more on tangibles. But we lose out or we miss out on the qualitative contributions to our democratic journey. And sometimes that is even the most important. And for me, the code of conduct constitutes another qualitative contribution to our democratic process. And it's something we must take seriously.
Okay.
One, like he said, it affords us an opportunity to confront corruption. Secondly, it puts the president in a better state to be able to police the actions of his appointees. And many of us, those of us who are monitoring, can equally even wake up tomorrow and file a petition to His Excellency President Mahama based on an information that we have, that a certain minister has accepted a gift from A, B, and C for His Excellency President Mahama to investigate. That is how you expand the frontiers of accountability. You see, Akable, one thing people are also missing out, that since the adoption of the Code of Conduct into the practices of the United Nations, our financial institutions, International Monetary Fund and World Bank and the likes, even before they release some development funds, they look at states who have such meaningful code of conduct to guide the conduct of state appointees. So it is, in a way, it is also going to make it possible for development funds that this country did not have access to, either to India, to be able to at least attract those development funds into the country. We cannot begin to downplay the significance of such policy interventions. Then the question then becomes, would it be effective? I think these are some of the questions that many of us are asking. But again, there are benchmarks for evaluating the efficacy of such codes. According to the United Nations, we are told that it must satisfy 3 pillars. 1, aspirations. Secondly, prescriptions. And the third one being prescriptions. Clearly, in the field of aspirations, we all know the commitment of His Excellency President Mahama to ensuring that he's accountable to the good people of this country and his disdain for any acts of corruption and willingness to punish same. So that in itself constitutes an example for his appointees to emulate. And the donation of the vehicles that he received to the state yesterday clearly was another way of sending a strong signal to his appointees to take a cue from. So if tomorrow I know that the minister responsible for children affairs or something has received a vehicle from the state, from a businessman and fails to disclose him, I can bring the president's attention to it. When it comes to prescriptions, there are rules, laid down rules as to how you can accept gifts beyond 20,000, I'm told, per the guidelines. So the rules are inherent in the code of conduct that the president has outdoors. Then in terms of the prescriptions, there are sanctions. What would happen if you fail to abide by these standards? So clearly, President Mahama is not a president who just introduces policies for the sake of it. Clearly, this is a man who understands the business of governance, who knows what he's doing. And if we give him the needed support, be rest assured that when it comes to expanding the frontiers of accountability, President Mahama would have succeeded in doing so under the Fourth Republic for other future leaders to be able to take a cue from. But that is not the end of it. We all must be vigilant as citizens of the Republic. His Excellency President Mahama cannot sit in his office and know which state official has received a gift or which minister of state has received a gift and has not disclosed. We must all be vigilant and be committed to contributing to this effort of His Excellency President Mahama to at least get rid of corruption in our body politics.
Let me come to Nana now. And Nana, your colleague Ebu, he sends a message. He says the current regulation on gift giving allows the circumvention through multiple donors. So if you want to go beyond the 100,000, so if you want to give 100,000, you just spread it across. Someone brings 20, someone brings 20. And he says that will bypass the intent of the regulation. This loophole in the code of conduct should be revisited and tightened to prevent abuse. But my question to you is the same question that I asked him. Don't you agree with the view that we just need a framework? I think earlier you had touched on it briefly. I had
stated earlier, even on other platforms before today, that there is the need for us to have a comprehensive document that would cover the entire of the public office. Now, if you read Act 284 of the Constitution 1992, it's titled the Code of Conduct for Public Offices. All right. Now, if you read the first, the 284, it says that a public officer shall not put himself in a position where his personal interest conflicts or is likely to conflict with the performance of the functions of his office. And anytime I've read this, I get the sense of how pregnant the statement is, how does one actually separate himself from the position of, likelihood of being in a conflict of interest? You understand me? So we should actually have a comprehensive document that would deal with the issue of this code of ethics that would be adopted by law. You understand? That would guide all of us, all of the public officers, not just the ministers and the appointees. Because if you would read the Act 286, subsection 5, it states the public officers for the provision of this particular article. It talks about the presidents, the vice, the speaker, the ministers, the chief justice and the judiciary. It talks about ambassadors and high commissioners and all of those persons. Yeah. It's everybody inclusive. So we need that comprehensive document that would spell out all of those activities that you do. See, Manasseh was talking about something, and all of these gifts and stuff. If you look at the activities of organizations and certain individuals, we talk about the philanthropic nature of some organizations, which falls under the corporate social responsibilities. Yeah. Now, if you look at the corporate social responsibilities, the pyramid, the 4 P's that form the pyramid of the social corporate responsibility, corporate social responsibilities, one of it is the philanthropy. You get it? So you are operating in a society as a business.
Where you're supposed to donate.
You understand? As part of being, or to build that sense of belongingness, of being part of the society, one of the activities would be to give free goodies to the society. So let's say I am an MP, and you have come to me because you operate within my enclave, my constituency, and you would want to build a 6-unit classroom block. Maybe you're a contractor. From the discussion we just had, after you have built and donated to the community on my behalf, because I'll be the end beneficiary of your donation.
Yeah.
Indirectly.
Yeah.
And there is the need to bid for a contract, and you win. Would it be because, as maybe the head of the GET Fund or the head of Education Ministry or the Communications Minister and an MP, you did that in my community or my constituency, would that be the reason why you got it? So then what happens to corporate social responsibilities? So we should be able to have a clear cut of some of these things. And you see, Joe, the truth be told, if we want to deal with this matter of corruption, we can deal with it. The president talked about the lifestyle of his appointees. All right? The lifestyle of his appointees. There should be that document, or with legal backing, that would be able to pin somebody to a lifestyle audit. We have some of these appointees who, prior to today, probably could not afford an S-Class Benz. And a year into government, you are driving an S-Class or an E-Class. Your wife is driving a V8. You used to travel in economy like me. Now you're traveling in business class. The Auditor General, or whichever team that is put together, should be able to trigger a lifestyle audit. You should be able to, and they should be able to call you to answer questions. Right? Prior to the elections in the United States. I don't know if it was the mayor of the New York or something. He was interdicted because he had accepted some flight tickets as gifts from his Turkish friends and all of that. You see, we should come to that point where I would see Hamza wearing his nice shirt and knowing very well that the pen in his pocket is beyond his reach. I should be able to question him.
Okay.
And this cannot be done if we do not have that policy document that has a legal backing.
Okay.
We should make that deliberate and conscious effort to make it done. Yeah, the president has done his bit. He has done his bit. Of course, whatever he did yesterday, and he has been talking about this code, was to stir a national discourse on this asset declaration and a lifestyle audit.
Okay.
All right. Prior to the elections, if you took the Great Transformational Plan to read the aspect of the pillar that deals with corruption, all right, it was clearly stated the need for us to have a lifestyle audit, the need for us to amend the current Act 550, the need for us to be able to deal with the so many of state agencies and institutions that dealt with corruptions, for us to be able to synchronize them and have an anti-corruption czar.
Okay. All
right. And this will take a deliberate and conscious political effort to be able to do it. Okay. The president has stirred the conversation. Let's take it up from here.
All right. And I mean, the point you made about the lifestyle audits, we know that the OSP had tried to do something about it, and he ran into challenges involving in the matter involving the former sanitation
the
minister.
one that wanted Amodka. You see,
I beg you, hold on for me.
You did ethics more of course than we had law.
You say what you want to say.
You know, you want to drive in an armored car.
Okay, you hold on. I didn't ask you that. You hold on for me. Let me bring in Adam Senanu. Adam Senanu is the co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Adam is joining us via Zoom. Mr. Senanu, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I want to start with a general question to you because of the role you play and the group that you lead. As an anti-corruption person, what do you generally make of the last, I mean, at least since January to now? We know that previously you had raised concerns last year under the previous administration about how the fight against corruption, if you look at the Corruption Perception Index, our performance was stagnant for a period. Do you get a sense with what you've seen so far that we are making some progress?
Well, thank you. Yes, I think that from the posture of the president and the actions being taken, there's a lot of seriousness being applied in their own words to resetting and making sure that we get back to standards and probably even exceed expectations. And so the fact that in terms of their own indicators, they are looking at the 120 mark and saying, out of what we said we'll achieve, how many of these have we? It's always good. A life, an unreflected life is not worth living. So those are important indicators, and it will translate into how citizens feel when they are responding to the various research instruments. So it's a good start. I just have some concerns about additional consultations that I think are important, such that what they put out reflects the totality of our aspirations. If aspirations are going to be one of the benchmarks, as one of your panelists said, look at the UN framework, as you will find in the Constitution Article 1.1, we repose authority in the government from time to time. And our aspirations, I think, need to be adequately codified. And at the moment, that would be captured in the COPU, which the previous government and its cabinet failed to pass. At least they got it to cabinet, but beyond that, in spite of the previous president's commitment to giving us a world-class public officers bill. That did not materialize.
And I mean, around the table, earlier in the discussion, we're having this shifting debate on whether we need that law in place. And I had made reference to the fact that the previous government could not pass it. But what we've seen the president do is a code of conduct. Do you share the view? And I get you leaning towards the fact that we may well need that legal framework in place as against the code that we've been using. We had one that was issued in 2013. Shraj also has some codes available. And now and again, we have another one coming in.
Absolutely. So the president has our goodwill. The president needs to move beyond an executive policy. You know, one of your panelists talked about how the New York mayor for taking flight tickets from Turkish friends was interdicted. That cannot happen without a law. You see, it is not the president who will have time to be checking all the officers. It is when citizens are empowered through existing law. And so that is the outcome, which is the aspiration of the people. An executive policy will not get us there. So there's higher ground to be achieved. And that's why I was saying that some consultation, there are many elements of what has come out that one can speak to. For example, all the officers who have not asked to file their assets are in breach of Article 286. When the president talked about giving them 3 months, I was uncomfortable because that already breaches Article 286. And the question is that if at this point you say we will take 3 months or 4 months of their money and fund Mahama Cares, that's ethically problematic. We cannot be taking money from people who've breached the Constitution or the law and use that to fund a very wonderful initiative. It sets a wrong precedent, because then it would be to suggest that people could breach the law, the Constitution, and we just say pay a certain amount and then we'll gloss over it. So we cannot waive that. That's problematic. If I look at the minimum threshold of 20,000, it raises eyebrows for me. I'll just calculating. Smart TV, maybe you get 4. Ordinary TV, you may be getting, is it 8, 10? You know, if I decide to do a standing order of 19,999 every week, what happens? I think that some more consultation will help us get something better. But much more important is that let's urgently pass the COPO, because that is justiciable. We can go to court and interdict officers. Then all has to be part and parcel of the monitoring system that holds duty bearers, responsible parties accountable for their tenure of office, and that is the way to go. So these are important. Let me also comment historically. The Public Services Commission, together with TRAJ, established a code of conduct. So we already have a code of conduct which they've been using, TRAJ together with PSC, to train public officers. I don't know whether this informed this current code of conduct. Having said all of this, we still applaud the president for his posture. But for the aspirations of this country, we need to move forward. You need a law. And it's possible to take what was done in the previous regime, go to cabinet, dust it, and in 6 months, get us a law that allows all of us to be proactive citizens, responsible parties in moving this nation forward.
Thank you very much, Edem Senanu. Edem Senanu is the co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. I know that, Hamza, you want to a bit of reaction. I'll come to you. I'll give you 1 minute to do that quickly. But let me just wrap up with Manasseh as well on Zoom. Manasseh, final comments on this discussion and generally on the fight against corruption.
Well, my final word is that we should have more of such transparency initiatives. I did a course last year when I was at Harvard on corruption. And in one of the topics, we studied lobbying. And it occurred to me that lobbying is just corruption that has been institutionalized. But it is important because people know who gives who what, who speaks for what. So when there's an issue, it is easier to hold people accountable because of that transparency. So my point is we should continue to champion that. And I would also want to add to what Edem Senanu said, that it should be a law President Mahama started something in his first term. The MPP administration ignored it. And then they didn't have a code of conduct. There's another code of conduct. We can be sure that even if an NDC person wins after Mahama, that person may be committed to it. So it shouldn't be something that should be left to the discretion of the president. It is so important that if it becomes a law, it will be binding on everyone who succeeds President Mahama.
Okay. Yes. So thank you very much, Manasseh Azurawini, investigative journalist and author, for joining us for this conversation this morning. Some messages that have come in so far. Prince Henry from Koforidua, you sent this one. You said that the micro-SIM minority should support the good of H.E. John Dramani Mahama and stop the backbiting, because when President John Mahama abolished e-levy and betting tax, it's not only the NDC who are enjoying, but all Ghanaians, including the NPP and the minority leader there. And there are some other conversations that are taking place on our social media handle. The Facebook stream is always a debate grounds there. Nana, you should see the conversation there. It's more than what you are doing in the studio. It's a whole debate. But Hamza, 1 minute, you wanted to a quick reaction to something that Adam had said.
See, respectfully, all over the world, we sanction behavior, and sometimes there are cost implications that goes with such sanctions. And when we get the revenue, we use it to fund developmental projects in the country. Okay. Today, if people even violate traffic offenses that are committed, there are fines that the courts may order for such fines. You simply do not say that because it has to do with an ethical behavior of somebody, you will not use that to fund developmental projects. So I disagree with my brother Edem, where he sought to make the assertion that indeed it is unethical for the president to use the forfeited monthly salaries of the appointees to fund the medical trust fund. I'm sure that upon deeper reflection, he would agree with me that that was clearly a slip. And for that matter, we should not be pushing such narratives, because all over the world, it is not just in Ghana. That is how we sanction behavior. Apart from prison sentences, you sanction it with a monetary cost associated with it. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the president adopting that posture. And again, finally, you see, if you look at the gift policy that the president has launched, it may have prescribed the 20,000,
the code of conduct. Code of conduct. That has an aspect of the
gift policy. It talks about 20,000 Ghana cedis. If you receive beyond 20,000 Ghana cedis, then you must have at least brought it to the attention of the president or reported or something like that. But it doesn't also mean, if you read it, doesn't also mean that anything less than 20,000 you shouldn't declare. So even if you go and buy a TV set of 19,000 Ghana cedis, the objective of the policy is that any gift you receive, report. So it doesn't matter the cost of the TV or a mobile phone that you have received. The requirement is on you to disclose same. So I simply do not see how people can meander around this conduct. But they can. You see, because the human institution. Yes, I'm coming. If you allow me to land. From where I sit, it is going to be difficult for you to try to hide your gift by buying TVs, because even the TVs we are supposed to disclose. But I acknowledge and I respect the calls for us to look at giving it the necessary legal impetus. But from where I sit, especially from someone who is familiar with international political developments all over the world, I simply do not think that the solution is giving it that legal impetus. The requirement is there now. The standard has been set. It behoves on us to ensure that many other future leaders live according to these dictates. But this obsession with laws, I am a bit uncomfortable with, but that does not mean that if tomorrow President Mahama sees sense in the cause for us to give it the necessary legal impetus, why not? Many of us will welcome it, but until that is done, I don't think that we should rush into such a venture.
In a minute, I beg you. I gave Hamza a minute and he did more. Give me one.
No, give me 1 minute. All I'm just saying is that we should amend these laws and give it more life. You understand me? We should look beyond just what the president has done. He has done well, by triggering the national discourse for us to look deeper into this discussion. Okay. But aside that, you know, when Hamza was talking, when a law is made or when a policy is brought, people dedicate time and energy to read and to identify loopholes. And one of the loopholes we have identified now seated here is what the gentleman was talking about. It's just like people who do, now if you go to the bank and I'm giving you an instrument, a check, I can't give you beyond 5,000 because it's over the counter. So if I want to give you 20,000, what do? I break it into 4. And we are saying that when you have come and you say 20,000 declare, and there is some level of ambiguity in the statement, people will play around the ambiguity. And so let's be more clear. Let's have a document that will have a legal backing that would stand the test of time.
All right. Thank you very much. And just before we go, we know that one story that we had brought you earlier, even on the morning news today, had to do with the minority leader and the issues surrounding him and the Ghana Police Service. There's a bit of an update here. Unfortunately, time didn't allow that. But there's a bit of an update that I want to bring to our viewers. We know that he has been invited by the police, but this is what the minority leader has done. He's petitioned the Inspector General of Police asking for investigation and disciplinary action against Constable Forson for assault at Parliament House during the Save the Judiciary demonstration. I hereby formally petition your office to investigate and take appropriate disciplinary action against Constable Forson, a tall, fair, and heavily built officer who was stationed at the entrance of Parliament House to provide security during yesterday's Save the Judiciary demonstration. Constable Forson assaulted me at the entrance of Parliament House during the demonstration. To address this incident and to correct the misleading narratives circulating in the public domain, I have issued a public statement detailing the events as they occurred. I rely on the said statement, which is hereby attached for your information and further action, counting on your usual cooperation, and is signed by Osahin Alexander Kwamena Afenyo Markin, the minority leader there. I'm not allowing anyone to comment on this. No one is commenting on this. Yes.
Why would you do
my head of broadcast media?
Because I'm out of time. I have to do commercial that
Jackson says I should say hi to you.
Commercial that brings money.
Jackson says I should say hi to you.
You shouldn't have proceeded. You shouldn't have proceeded to read
You're allowed to say that.
You shouldn't have read that piece.
Hamza,
you shouldn't have.
That's fine.
Because see, we have had cause to complain about the conduct of Afenyo Markin on this table.
Okay.
And you see, and the fact that the gentleman seem to be interested in engaging in all kinds of dishonesty. You see, he stands as one dishonest politician in our body politics. And you guys are giving him. No, but you see, wait. Nana, please. We have discussed so many people who are not on this table. He is a political office holder. Please.
I agree.
Nana. Can you respect me, please? You see,
but when he started biting, we have to have a bite on this.
Many people listen to us as political operatives.
Yes.
Especially the role he's occupying as minority leader. He's expected to be an example to many of our young people out there. But since his assumption into that office, all what the gentleman seemed to be engaging in is politics of dishonesty, disregard for our democratic ethos. You saw his conduct even before the vetting committee. Today, everybody saw the video of Afenyo Markin assaulting the said police officer. And the police have indicated their willingness to investigate it. Yes. And you will sit here and seek to defend him.
Nobody's defending him. What I'm saying is that he has allowed the investigation.
And he's smartly dishonest. So he should have allowed. Why is he trying to stampede that?
He's a lawyer like you. That's why you.
But why is he trying to stampede?
You play technicalities.
What technicalities are you talking about?
It's one that we are bringing to your attention. The venue is Christ the King. The venue is Christ the King, and the time is 6 p.m. Please come and let's support this good cause. And so it is the book launch of Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, which is taking place at Christ the King this Wednesday, 7th May 2025. We expect you to show up and attend. I'm reminded of those times in school when the teacher says stop work and you want to still manage to write things. I mean, Hamza managed to get his point in, but it's fine. No further response. Nana, it's okay. We'll leave it here. my guest, no, it's not. I don't think Hamza is being disruptive or anything. He wants to make a comment on that, and that is fine. That is it by way of our discussion on big issue this morning. My guests have been Hamza Said Suini. He is a legal practitioner, a member of the National Democratic Congress communication team as well, and Nanaya Osapon with the Movement of Change senior political aide to Alan Kojo chairman team. Earlier, you heard from Manasseh Azuri-Awini, an investigative journalist and an author. We also heard from Edem Senanu, co-chair of the Students' Movement Against Corruption. And that is it for Big Issue Now. New Day continues.